Mary. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the podcast of the nerd. I'm Ian. How are you? Are you okay? Been a little while since we've checked in. Nothing. It's fortunate for me that having not done a podcast in a couple of weeks, that so little has happened. Otherwise, I might feel challenged and not sure what to say. I got up early to record yesterday, but I ended up spending most of the day grappling with what today's podcast should be about. I have some notes on some, we'll say, morbid and frustrating things I was dealing with for the month around, things like mortality and family. But I wrote those notes before the actual reality of what we're all collectively living in shifted into warp speed surreal. And there may be some children walking around in the hallway outside. I mean, it's Tuesday now, and just the difference between today and Thursday when I published the video is insane. You are at the moment inundated with news and information, and I know you are because I am. And I'm generally pretty good about avoiding social media. I think it's important to be informed, but I think that an overabundance of information can be not a healthy thing. So, I don't want to go the route of sharing with you the stuff that was happening before last Thursday, because I don't think it's my greatest contribution to make right now to bum everybody out. But here's the thing. I think you know me. By the way, the Patreon hangout was on Saturday, and I was a bit sick. I've been sick for weeks. I've been more sick this year than I have been in as long as I can remember. I think what it is living alone for 7 years and being someone who worked from home at my previous job and then doing this and all of that. My immune system needed a tune-up. I skipped a couple of firmware updates on the immune system. And then moving in here with my friend's 6 kids, it's getting that workout. Getting my butt kicked, and it's okay. But anyway, I've had a cold for... My friend who is a doctor said that this is one of the worst cold seasons he's seen in a while, on top of, what's going on worldwide. But anyway, I am me, and I just thought if I were to start recording, throw up some jazz hands, and tell knock-knock jokes, it might be even more of a cause for concern on your end. So, I put up a tweet asking what people might be interested in me talking about today, and I'll get into some of that. But I just kind of needed to talk a little bit about where I'm at, too, if you don't mind indulging me. After that, I wanted to chat a little bit about Dear Boy, which I published on Thursday, Angel Episode Guide Season 2, Episode 5. Then respond to some Twitter suggestions, tell you about plans for the upcoming week, and then Fanfic Reading. The return of our reading of Here Is Gone by Terri Botta. Parentheses, I add a spike tail. So all of the time codes for those specific things are in the show notes if you just want to skip ahead. But, all right. So, where am I? Heavy heart, I would say. A bit of personal upheaval the past month. Script funks are always just kind of a bummer because I'm so frustrated with having been doing this for 5 years and still banging face to brick with, you've heard me go up and down all of that. And also, once we kind of get outside the boundaries of a week with a script, I'm most often just bathing in guilt. And it's not an enjoyable time. I talked about that in the difference between procrastination and laziness. In my mind, I think there are exceptions to that. But, yeah. Then, in the midst of that, got a wicked cold for 2 weeks that knocked me on my tuchus. It's a family show, Ian. I've never been as sick as I have been in the past year. And I'm having trouble now, as you can tell. So, needless to say, several of my New Year's resolutions, which I've been talking about in the process of this podcast, haven't been touched in a month as well. I actually climbed on a scale today for the first time and was delighted to see that I'm the lowest I've been since I started the year, which makes no sense to me because once I got sick, intermittent fasting went away, running went away, everything kind of fell by the wayside. But hey, whatever. They say, the most effective diet, sorry about that, the most effective diet that exists is, see, I was going to make a joke, and then I actually flashed on current events, and I was like, oh, that joke's not funny. So there was that. New Year's resolutions have been a bit dropped, and now in the past week, the national reality here in the States and worldwide, what the daily normal, such as it ever was, now looks quickly and completely different. So, I've been reading, I follow a few of you on Twitter, and it's interesting. I really enjoy it because, a lot of what I do is, I suppose, relates to the idea of community and loneliness and just kind of connection and dealing with all of that. And it's always interesting to see, as long as it doesn't get into politics or tribalism or any of that, just people's wide reactions to change, whether good change, bad change, or unwanted change, or whatever it may be. One of my best friends, Toby, who is a marvel, she's terrific. She, I in my head, I see Toby sort of seeing the news and reacting with a kind of a sensible pragmatism. And I don't know if she listens to this podcast. Toby, if you do, forgive me if you feel I'm misrepresenting you. But, where I met her at my previous job. We've been friends for about 10 years. 8 years? I don't know. But once you meet a Martin, you're friends for life. Where I kind of hem and haw, and I don't know if I feel like doing this, and what is my motivation, and she, in the meantime, had multiple jobs and just kicking ass on multiple fronts, and it just gets stuff done and is so just pragmatic and effective. And I think about the difference between her and I, and then in the context of the way people react to, this kind of thing. The world changes, all of us staying home now, all of that. There's a new present reality to adjust to, and based on the evidence of this weekend, I don't even know what Toby's reaction would be, but I know that I wish that I had that reaction instead. But based on the evidence of this weekend, I know the person I would compulsively be when confronted by these circumstances, and that is The man in the baggy sweatpants curled up in bed with a box of Botta and a bottle of Canadian Mist, watching shows that make me cry, wondering if it's still safe to get delivery jalapeno poppers. I'm not saying that's exactly how my weekend went, but that's exactly how my weekend went. And as a high anxiety neurotic, I guess that's just kind of my autopilot, my automatic way of being. Catastrophize myself into terror, toss my goals and commitments out the window, and drown the storm of fear that I have stirred up in my own head. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay to be that guy or gal for a couple of days. It reminds me of that story I've told you before. One night I was laying in bed, bored with terrible, boring insomnia, just rolling around. That's one of the weird things about insomnia is how dull it is. And I just started chatting up Google Home at random. I was stuck on a script, supremely frustrated with myself, and so I asked Google, how do I stop procrastinating? And Google said, 10 steps to follow to stop procrastinating. Step number 1 was forgive yourself for procrastinating. And the next day I finished the script. So for me, that is the way any emotional fixation works, and that's where the business of shifting it starts. I wish I could guilt or shame or should or shouldn't myself into doing things. I have friends who can, and I anything that gets the job done, I admire. But I know from a lot of trying and failing that those feelings are just crippling for me, not motivating. I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this. It doesn't work. Eventually, I just end up in an inert pile of self-hatred, just gorging on gummy bears and slamming back rosé because screw it now, man. Who even cares? Dignity, Ian. So, I had a bad weekend. And I let the autopilot drive. Sweatpants McBoda box is apparently my go-to personality when the world starts looking a little weird. And that's okay. But the fact that I'm hoping, self-aware of how the autopilot works in this way means, and get your bingo cards ready, I get a choice. And the question that this podcast is all about is pretty straightforward. The world is what it is, and who do I choose to be today? I was talking with Jack about this kind of way of working through troubles, and the one we always just kept coming back to is, okay, so what do we do now, Buffy? And the answer to that question really hasn't changed since New Year's. Sweatpants McMoto Box had his weekend. That is apparently how I react. My initial reaction to, the world's very different and weird looking now. And, then the week starts and it's time to pick myself up, dust myself off, and just get back to work. The only real antidote to anxiety anyway is action. And there are many rocks to go and get. So that's where I'm at. Recording the podcast is a part of that. Tomorrow I will be live tweeting the next Buffy script, the outline for family. And I'm very aware of, if you're new to this self-sequestering, staying home, it might be a bit lonely, but I hope that there is some solace in the fact that we're all doing it. We're all doing this thing together. There may be a piece of drywall between you and your neighbor, but there's a human being on the other side of it, or across the lawn. And, we'll get through it. And I think that my contribution to make to that process is to talk about shows that have been off the air for 18 years and to get together with a wonderful group of people on the internet, have a conversation about those shows that have been off the air for years, and to not throw gasoline on the fire. It's too easy to be scared. I speak from experience. That is, as we said, my first reaction is lying on the ground in the fetal position, and there's a box of Botta right there in that little... You get the idea. So, let's move on, unless something else comes up. Again, this may sound... This little diatribe may have sounded ridiculous. Maybe you're more of a Toby. I wish I was more of a Toby, but I'm an Ian, so I'm going to try and do what an Ian can to be helpful, I guess. This is why I write a little bit more, because speaking off the cuff, yeah. All right, so let's talk about Dear Boy. I think the video turned out pretty well, but why did it take 5 weeks to finish? Well, we've talked about a number of the reasons. This one obviously stretched out longer than expected until the thing that I was actively having to combat, the thing I was fighting, was no longer the script, but it just plain old inertia, which does happen. And I would not have pegged this video as being one that triggered the face meets wall script problem, because after the live tweet session, I felt like I had some really good notes. Understanding Darla's, God, I could eat his eyeballs, was what that was referring to was quite a head-slapping moment for me. And I think that it is rich with things to get into there. The Connor relationship obviously is... What is the mutant enemy obsession with Oedipus? The Connor relationship and how that all sort of went down between Cordy and Deep Down and all of those, that was a sort of self-evidently Oedipal. But the Darla relationship, it hadn't never really dawned on me. And then when I kind of said, is she referring to Oedipus? This is one of the reasons why I enjoy the live tweet sessions. I believe it was Sarah responded, Darla literally breastfed Angel into existence. And so I thought that was really, really good stuff. Of course, I prefer the musical, dramatic, emotional kinds of things to that. But my point is that I didn't watch the episode and say, well, what the hell am I going to say about this? So when I chatted, and then when I went and chatted with Bad Decisions Jess about it, she was the one who came up with the Tiresias the Blind Prophet connection to Lorne, which I thought was awesome. But then a week went by, and then another, and the voices crept in, and it was the same old song. So, as ever, for me, in running this business, which I guess is what this is, right? The greatest impediment to the process remains scripting. But, fall short 1,000 times, you keep trying, because try number 1001 might be the thing that clicks. I've been binging a lot of The Good Place. We'll talk about that in a minute. So the way I broke through this time was by switching up the morning process. Earlier in the year, I talked about using Youper, the app, as a form of kind of guided journaling. And the thing I've discovered is it's just not really built for that. Not for that specific kind of everyday use. So I think the way that was sort of popping up for me was if I was in a good mood or if I wasn't suffering over something, then firing up the app and using it just kind of felt tedious. So a couple of weeks ago, I was watching Wheezy Waiter, who I've talked about before, who is a gentleman, a balding, bespectacled YouTube maker of middle age that has another channel where he talks about his process, and he said he had taken up journaling, and it was very effective and helpful. So I started thinking maybe a traditional morning journaling habit would be more helpful. First thing of the day, get my fingers moving on the keyboard, set the goals, get my brain sails up and the rudder aimed in the right direction, and it worked. I started journaling on a Tuesday, but Wednesday I finished the script. I don't have the timeline right in my head. But after a day or two, really what it is I suffer from not suffer is the wrong word, but I struggle with so many of the classic impulsive fallacies when it comes to creating something. And that the one for me with that comes up with scripting is just kind of emotionally, I think I feel I can't really I can't really figure out how this section is going to go in the script. So I probably can't sit down and write, which is nonsense, because the truth of it is you start writing and then you figure out how to get to the end of it, and then you edit and revise and clean up and so forth. But every single time I'm just kind of like, I don't know if I have anything to say about that. But I can't figure out what I have to say until I start writing. So with journaling, the thing that has been successful for me so far is getting me in the stream of thoughts to fingertips to keyboard to words on the page. It's I said that one of the I think I said in early January when we started talking about New Year's resolutions that I've never found journaling effective because if there's a storm in my head, I just end up with a storm on paper and it doesn't really clear up or anything like that. But in tandem with the conversation that we had with Lonnie a couple of weeks ago, where she talked about target audience, with journaling, what I sit down and I'm not writing to me. I'm not having a conversation with me. What I am is I'm having a conversation with, and this is just for me, this is the target audience of my journal, my therapist. So here's what I want to accomplish for today. Here's what I need to get done. And based on the work and the working relationship that I have with this woman that I've been seeing for a couple of years, I know how to effectively attack things that are sort of blocking me, or things I need to say or clear up or whatever. Now, if I'm talking to myself in the journal, if I'm my own target audience, it's verges on navel gazing or mental masturbation, but picturing a person with which I have very effective communication, for me, made it so much more effective, where, okay, here's what I need to accomplish today, here's where I'm blocked, and so forth, and then that goes into the to-do list goes in the calendar, and I start executing the day. So I started by using Evernote. In the morning, I create a new note, 6 lines in it, 6 headings, big day tasks, weekly goals, daily habits, radar, which is just things that I think at some point I need to deal with, renewing my LLC for Colorado, stuff like that. Gratitude, and then thoughts. I don't always get the gratitude section filled out, but under thoughts, I pretend I'm talking to her, and it works. Got the script done, video out a couple of days later. I have been doing this long enough now that, I'm not holding my breath. This one worked for this one, and I will continue to work on this habit of writing. Basically it was like, when Youper worked, why did it work? And then transferring that to just doing that in a journal in the morning. Another thing I noticed when I was poking around inside of Evernote was a template called Focus Energy Log. Basically, it's a spreadsheet. I know this sounds very dry, but just getting it out of the way. It's a spreadsheet with a row for each hour of the day at the top of the hour. So once an hour, 10 a.m., check a 1 through 5 for focus, enthusiasm, and energy. It takes me about 20 seconds. And that may sound tedious, but the thing of it is, it's 20 seconds, and what it is building in an hourly system to stop, take quick stock, and say, okay, where am I? What am I focused on? What am I doing? And if I'm distracted, how can I get back to the thing that I'm working on? I work from home. I don't sit in a cubicle. There's no one around me. There's no boss looking over my shoulder. The day is just clay. I mean, it's a soup of possibility. Anything at any moment, any time. And so far, the effect of this has been cutting down on the rabbit holes I find myself falling into when I'm home alone all day. Oh, I'll just watch a good mythical morning video or 12. Oh, I'll just play some Dota hey, I'm just going to take a break. I earned it. I wrote a paragraph. I'm going to take a break and go and play Dota. And oh my God, 4 hours have gone by and I've lost the entire day. So with the log, it's a chance to just take a moment at the top of every hour, be present, ask myself, what am I working on? What do I want to be working on? And do I need to course correct if necessary? And like I said, I'm not holding my breath. For now, these things are working. Monday and after national events, it was a mighty struggle to get going in the morning. That's kind of the way I am. But here we are, having this conversation now. And the thing about any tool, I say this as a former GTD addict, and I don't mean addicted to getting things done. I mean addicted to systems designed to help you get things done. The number of to-do lists I've bought over the years, the number of apps, it's the toolbox fallacy. The number of things that I accumulated because I was like, well, if this will be the thing that will, and there's just no substitute for just start. So, the thing about any tool is it doesn't matter how fancy or helpful it can be if you never pick it up. But so far, waking up in the morning, one goal in mind, start journaling. As opposed to waking up in the morning and say, okay, I have to finish the script today and I have to record and then hopefully get an edit stream done. And, I said I was going to do a game stream in the evening. I said, no. Sit down, do the one thing. The one thing feeds the rest of the system. We'll see what happens. Maybe number 1001 will be the one. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed Dear Boy. Next up is Buffy, I think it's season 5, episode 6, Family. Planning on live tweeting that first draft tomorrow. All right, so I threw out a tweet asking what people wanted me to discuss today and got a couple of responses. Most were sort of related to this one. Mr. Defrosted Robot says, maybe talk about a couple of your favorite comedy shows that aren't Parks and Recreation. So first of all, Boris, thank you for the question. Second of all, how dare you, sir? I will never stop talking about Parks and Recreation. But I saw Joss responded to a tweet yesterday asking people to throw out their comfort movies. I'm going to change that to my comfy Blankie TV and movies. And now just to give you a sense of what I'm describing, I'm not sure I would put Buffy or the Buffyverse on the comfy Blankie category. It's too emotionally devastating at times. There are episodes that are comfy Blankies, but overall, the show is not what I'm describing. But that means that this is not an all-time favorites list. this is I want to feel warm and safe and okay kind of list. So, in no particular order, number 1, Parks and Recreation. Now, here's how comfy a Blankie Parks and Rec for me is. I watch it every night. I may seriously have a problem. I start an episode, I turn on the TV sleep timer, I put on the eye covers, and I feel safe. So Parks and Recreation is about a parks department in a fictional town in Indiana. It's an ensemble faux documentary show with Amy Poehler's character Leslie Lester Knopf, at its center. And I love it not just because it's really funny, but because it's a show full of good people. Good people of varying philosophies just trying to make their way in the world. Excuse me. And that'll be kind of a common trend to most of the ones I've mentioned. Stumbling blocks for getting into the show. Season 1. Whenever I mention this show, I get a few people who mentioned they tried it but couldn't get into it. Season 1 is very dry and not a representation of what the show becomes. So I recommend start with Season 2. It's not a show that you watch for the plot arcs and the twists and the turns and all of that. Nothing happens in Season 1. Other than some characters meet, but you'll understand their relationships in context after a minute of them being on screen. So, start with Season 2, go from there. If you get into the show and love it, you can end by watching Season 1 after Season 7. Currently, all seasons of Parks and Recreation are on U.S. Netflix. I can't speak for other areas. And I specifically looked... I'm going to talk about 4 here, and all 4 of them were ones that I made sure were on U.S. Netflix, which is the only one that I have access to. I mean, there were other things I would have thrown out if we were just speaking broadly, but we're all at home, and a lot of us have Netflix, so check and see. Okay, next from the creator of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Michael Schur, I think I'm saying that right, The Good Place. Good Place is a little more difficult to describe because it is pretty loaded with twists and turns that I don't want to spoil, including one right at the end of the first episode. I mean, in fairness, actually, I'm going to move myself over there. There we go. The Good Place. Yay. I think even Netflix description of the show spoils the end of the first episode, but yeah, I get it. If you trust me, just go and watch. So the setup is Kristen Bell's character, Eleanor, wakes up in the afterlife. She is in the good place. And the first person she meets is Ted Danson's character, Michael, an afterlife architect who designed the neighborhood she's going to spend her eternity in. It's an ensemble show. That's my favorite kind. Very character-driven comedy, which over the course of the seasons begins to become more and more touching. But because it's grounded in character, touching in a way that feels completely earned and wonderful. The characters all go on a bit of a journey together, and it's beautiful to behold. If you like the kind of thing, and if you enjoy the kind of thing I do on the channel with Buffy, The Good Place is loaded with philosophy and does a similar thing as Buffy, where the story of an episode will be used to explore a specific philosophical concept, like the trolley problem. The show is a joy. Good people trying to be good and having to grow in order to do it. There's a ton of Narnia-like fantasy elements about it, and the 4 seasons are one continuous story from beginning to end. So no skipping. Stumbling blocks for the show. The only one I ran into when I watched it for the first time was at the end of the first season, where I thought that was pretty good, but I have no idea how they're going to do another season. That's just as interesting. They do. They absolutely do. By the end of the second episode in season 2, I went, okay, I'm in. I'm in. So, don't skip an episode. You really can't. And the finale which came out this year, has been so stuck in my brain since I watched it a couple of weeks ago that I have since rewatched the show again. And I so desperately needed someone to talk to about it that I got Jack addicted to the show just so he'd rip through it and we could have a conversation about it. The funny thing was, and I'm not comparing these in terms of tone, but I felt that way at the end of The Body. The end of The Body, I watched something. I sat there in silence after watching The Body and realized that I had watched something that I so desperately wanted to share with someone immediately in that moment. But I knew that unless they watched 4.5 seasons of television, it wasn't going to matter to them the same way. You know, it was an amazing experience. And the finale of The Good Place is very similar. So give it a go. Definitely one of my top 3 finales ever. All Good Things Not Fade Away, Sozin's Comet, and The Good Place. That would be 4. First 3 seasons of The Good Place are on Netflix right now. I believe the 4th season is on Hulu. I know that outside of Netflix US, Netflix UK, I believe has all 4 seasons because it aired on Netflix rather than any other network. So those should keep you busy. I really wanted to recommend Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I couldn't find it on a streaming service, which was kind of the prerequisite for making the list. But that show is in my personal top 3 all-time alongside Buffy, so if you trust me, just go grab the DVDs and give it a go. All right, 2 quick movie hits, all on Netflix. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. It is so unbelievably good. It is the best Spider-Man movie, period. And the best superhero movie in a decade? It's really good. Maybe the best superhero movie for me. I don't know. Christopher Reeve's Superman. Miss Tessmacher. That's a tough choice. So, and we can put my face for people watching on the interwebs back where it's supposed to be. There we go. So, incredible animation. Miles Morales is a wonderful protagonist, and the story is loaded with emotional stuff that resonates at any age. Watch it. You know, it's a leap of faith. Second one is, this is a very different, and what I consider to be an underrated romantic comedy called About Time. It's written and directed by Richard Curtis, who wrote Love Actually, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and Notting Hill. Stars Dom Hall Gleason, Rachel McAdams, and the British treasure, Mr. Bill Nye. Bill Nye is Dom Hall's dad, and on his son's 21st birthday, reveals to him that the men in their family have the ability to travel in time. I personally enjoy a good romantic comedy, and especially love one that incorporates science fiction premises like time travel, but does it in a way that feels sort of grounded and realistic, and is less about the way the mechanic functions, just as opposed to what the mechanic opens up in the storytelling. Will the movie change your life? No. But it's a fun, joyful piece of escapism, and I kind of feel like that's something we all kind of need right now. Then again, the 3rd most watched movie on Netflix right now, at the time of recording, is Outbreak. Which seems like a very weird coping mechanism, my fellow Americans, my fellow Netflix Americans. That said, I watched Outbreak, and boy, that movie does not hold up. Contagion is much more interesting. All right, goals for the week. I'd like to get back to doing some Red Dead Redemption 2 streaming. Hopefully be doing that Thursday night. If you're interested in the video game streams, just follow me on Twitter, because I will tweet them out That's at Ian Nittram. And tomorrow I'm going to be live tweeting the script session for the next Buffy episode. And Jack and I are also going to be getting Patreon bonuses current. I realize it's been a bit of a tumultuous year, and one of the things that has suffered is me delivering on those bonuses poorly, which was what was happening before. Now it just we've not been delivering on them. So we need to get those caught up, which is going to mean a few more readings and whatever else people are into. The other thing I was thinking about with Patreon was, and Jack and I were talking about this the night before, because we've been staying up till all hours watching The Good Place together, which our Star Trek The Next Generation marathon morphed into. The other thing I was thinking was the $5 level on Patreon. I get a lot of notes from people when I reach out to them to talk about the Patreon bonuses that they're just donating and it's just because they appreciate what I do, which is crazy and moving, and I'm very grateful. But and I forgot to switch over to About Time. There you go. But I've been thinking about the Patreon Hangouts, the Patreon Hangouts, the group that has been going. There's a pretty steady, regular group of people. We get some new people every now and again, which I love and appreciate. But I've realized that it's an intimidating thing. Maybe not for the Tobys of the world. But, for the Ians of the world, if video conferencing in with someone who makes content that I enjoy and having a conversation with a room full of strangers, and not only that, but having that conversation streamed to the internet is a tall order. Takes a lot of, I think it takes a lot of guts. And I don't think that if people want to chat with me and talk with me about these kinds of things, that should be absolutely necessary. So I've been considering adding an unstreamed game night to Patreon. Maybe once a month, do a similar kind of thing where we have a Google Hangout where you can join in voice or what have you, and play Jackbox together. Just Buffy trivia, any number of things, but more of just kind of a hangout than the form that we have sort of found for the episode conversations, which I love, by the way. God, those conversations continue to blow my mind, what people see and come up with. It's gorgeous, and I get to be I get to be the fan from scratch again in that situation where it's like, oh, that's so brilliant. So anyway, once Jack and I get the current Patreon bonuses up to date, then I'll probably look at adding a game night. I think it'll be, the current Patreon hangout is $5. It might make it $6 or whatever. I think there's some complication for it being the same number, but we'll see. And maybe that's not an interesting idea to people. I'm not sure. So boom, boom, boom. And the other thing of goals for me for this week is to kind of take stock of that New Year's resolution list and, get started again. I have a to-do list generated from Lonnie and our conversation to start the novel. Now that she and I have had that conversation, thoughts about the novel and the characters and, I've got to work this out and how this works and have been popping back into my head. I think what I'm going to do is just pick up that story that I started when I started the channel, because I want to get back to, I like what was there, and I feel a connection to that main character, and that I never wrote her out of that situation bugs me. So, of course, this podcast is largely procedural and just all about process. So I will talk to you about that. But again, take stock, get some things going again, get a couple of runs in now that the cold is gone, and talk with you guys again on Monday. So before I get into the fanfic reading, I just want to let you know that I'm at Ian Nittram on Twitter and youtube.com/Passion of the Nerd if you'd like to support the channel and keep me flush with hand sanitizer and flu medication. You can do so at patreon.com/Passion of the Nerd or by grabbing yourself something from passionofthenerd.com/store. And if you're an Amazon Prime member, you may not realize this, but you can support me by going over to the Twitch channel and using your monthly Amazon Prime subscription. Either way, I appreciate it. So thank you. Now let's get into Here Is Gone. So I should have, within a day or two of posting this podcast, also uploaded a catch-up, which is the first 10 chapters of Here Is Gone in one single listening. Nothing else, none of the podcasts that you can listen to, chapters 1 to 10. All right, so we are on chapter 11. I just want to make sure now. Yep, we are on chapter 11. All right. Here Is Gone. Chapter 11 by Terri Botta. Links in the description or show notes if you want to read ahead. The following day, Spike made his way to the hospital via the sewers. He knew that today was the day Joyce would be diagnosed with the tumor, and he wanted to be there. He found Buffy comforting a distraught Dawn, but there was no sign of Joyce. "Hi, Spike," Dawn greeted listlessly. "They take her in?" he asked when Buffy looked up at him. Buffy nodded, her hand absently stroking Dawn's hair. "They took her in about 20 minutes ago." He nodded but didn't say anything. Instead, he looked around before settling down on a chair next to Buffy and waited in silence. Half an hour later, a nurse appeared at the entrance to the waiting room and called Buffy back to see her mother. "Stay with Dawn, please," she asked him, her eyes sad and worried. Spike nodded and moved into the chair next to Dawn as Buffy followed the nurse. Dawn looked stricken, and Spike swallowed the lump in his throat. "Don't worry, Niblet. I'm sure your mom's just fine." He lied, after several tense moments, trying to be cheerful. Dawn turned to him with reddened eyes. "No, she's not." Spike seemed put off, his brow creasing. "How do you know?" "'Cause they only wanted Buffy. If Mom was fine, they'd have asked for both of us. But because I'm the little sister..." Spike tried to deflect her tears. "Now, Bite-Size, I'm sure there's a good reason for why they only wanted Buffy." "I'm not a baby, Spike. I can tell when someone is trying to protect me. I watch TV, you know. It's always the youngest who finds out last." Spike snorted, piffle. "You watch too much TV, Niblet. TV isn't real life, and real life doesn't work that way. Doesn't it?" Spike was about to respond when Buffy returned. The look on her face broke his heart. "Buffy?" Dawn asked timidly. Buffy sat down on the other side of Dawn and reached out a shaky hand. "Dawnie? Mom's going to be okay, right?" Tears welled up in Buffy's eyes. "We don't know. The doctors, they found a shadow in Mom's brain." "A shadow?" Dawn repeated. "They don't know what it is. They're taking her into surgery to do a biopsy." "Surgery? Now?" Buffy nodded. "Can I see her before?" Dawn asked. Buffy nodded again. "I'll take you back." As she and Dawn got up, Buffy looked at Spike, an apologetic expression on her face. "Spike, I know, Slayer. Family only." Buffy confirmed it and gave a little shrug. "Niblet, tell Mom I'll be seeing her soon, and I'll make her some cocoa." "I will, Spike," Dawn agreed, and followed her sister down the hall. Buffy came back a minute later. "I'm going to call the magic box, let them know what's going on." "Okay. You stay here with Dawn for a moment?" "Not a problem. Whatever you need, whatever I can do." She gave him a soft smile and headed for the payphones. Returned a few minutes later, quiet and pensive, and sat next to him. It was all he could do to keep from putting his arm around her. Dawn joined them as they wheeled Joyce on a stretcher down to the OR. The older woman gave him a smile and a wave, which he returned as he watched her go. Then the three of them settled in for the long wait. It was hard on Spike because he already knew the outcome, and he was never good at waiting. Thankfully, the room had a television, and he watched soap operas. Dawn fell asleep at some point during the afternoon, and he covered her with his duster. Buffy was staring off into space. Dawn was sleeping, and he was watching Passions, when Riley entered the waiting room looking flustered. "Riley," Buffy said, surprised to see him. Spike just sat back and smirked to himself. Since Soldier Boy hadn't caught him sniffing Buffy's sweaters that morning, he hadn't known about Joyce's tests. "I just came from the magic box. They told me about your mom. Buffy, why didn't you call me?" Buffy looked away guiltily. I didn't want to worry you until we knew what was going on." "Well, you did worry me. I went by your house this morning and no one was there. I had no idea what was going on." His voice was steadily rising. "Oi! Keep it down. Niblet's sleeping and I'm trying to watch the telly," Spike groused. Riley glared at him. He sneered back. "What's he doing here?" the ex-soldier complained. That's my Riley voice. Buffy rolled her eyes impatiently, and Spike silently cheered. "He was there last night when Mom told us about the test results, and he asked if I minded if he came. I said no. He and Mom are friends. He cares." Riley tried to whisper, but he didn't account for vampire hearing. "Buffy, do I have to remind you that Spike is a vampire?" Buffy cut him off. "I don't have time for this, Riley. He asked. I said yes. End of discussion." Riley backed off, hands raised in surrender. Buffy caught sight of Joyce's doctor scanning the room and rose to her feet. She walked over to him, motioning Riley to stay behind. Spike waited a few beats, then got up, giving Riley a nonchalant shrug. "Never was good at doing what I was told," he quipped, and headed over to the other side of the room. "Do you have the results yet?" he heard her ask as he joined them. She cast him a glance, but didn't make him leave. "Why don't we sit down over," the doctor said after a pause. Buffy interrupted him. "No, excuse me, doctor. No. Not to be rude, but I don't want to sit down. I've been doing nothing but sitting down for hours. Just tell me." The doctor sighed and gave in. "Your mother has, the term is low-grade glioma. It's a brain tumor." Spike saw Buffy's eyes glaze over in shock. Then her knees gave out. With his vampire speed, he was able to get a chair underneath her before she fell, but then stepped back, giving her space. This was proving to be more difficult for him than he had originally thought, but he had to see it through for Buffy. Still, it was so hard to not give himself away, so hard not to reach out, but he couldn't. He hadn't been given that right yet. "The clinical name is oligodendroglioma. It's the left hemisphere of the cerebrum. In your mother's case, the tumor seems to have started there. In other words, it hasn't spread there from another part of the body, which in a way is good news." The doctor moved to sit across from Buffy, his face compassionate. "I know this is very difficult, and unfortunately, because of the nature of your mother's illness, things could progress very quickly." The words snapped Buffy out of her stupor. "Things? What things?" "Symptoms. There are a fair variety that might present. Loss of vision or appetite, lack of muscle control, mood swings, or personality changes." "But what can we do?" she asked. The doctor gave her a gentle smile. "Not much, until we determine if the tumor is operable, which we're working on." "Well, is there something I should be doing? Can I help?" The doctor nodded. "Well, there's some literature you might want to look at. If we aren't able to go in surgically, there's a number of new treatments that are very promising. Your mother's prognosis is a lot better today than it would have been a year ago, even if the tumor is non-operable. She has a real chance." Buffy, shrewd as ever, replied, "What's a real chance?" The doctor hesitated, but Spike's growl made him answer, "Nearly 1 in 3 patients with this condition do just fine." The words hit Buffy hard, and Spike saw her hands start to tremble. Now let me ask, does your mother's insurance company require copies of MRI and pathology reports? The doctor was asking. Never having dealt with such a situation before, Buffy was at a loss. I'm not sure. Just let me know as soon as possible, and I could use some information regarding your mom's lifestyle and home environment. For instance, does she use a cell phone? Buffy was looking overwhelmed, and Spike ached to step in, but he didn't know what to say. I think she uses one of those. She had an ear thing, but okay. Is your house near any power lines, chemical plants, waste disposal facilities? I don't think so. Maybe. Dumps on the other side of town, Spike commented. Well, the more we know. I'm sorry, Buffy trailed off. Someone new joined them, and Spike turned in time to see Ben touch the doctor on the shoulder and tell him that he was needed in ICU. At the sight of the intern, Spike's vision went red, and he clenched his fist. Kill you. Kill you, I will. You and the hell bitch not gonna touch my girls. The doctor was standing, giving his condolences, but Ben was still there. Bomb your car. Put poison in your drink. Ben was explaining that he saw Buffy floundering and had fabricated the story of the page to get rid of the doctor and give her some space. For a moment, it looked like he was going to sit next to Buffy, but one look from Spike made him change his mind. Listen, the intern said nervously, casting odd glances at the vampire that was looming protectively and glaring at him. Your mom's going to be unconscious for at least another 6-7 hours. Why don't you take a break? A break, Buffy repeated, stunned. I just mean go out, get some air. Come back later this evening, talk to the doc if you want. He backpedaled. Buffy hesitated, and Spike moved in closer, menacing. Ben threw up his hands good-naturedly. My unsolicited advice of the day. I don't know why Ben's drunk. He waved and moved off, stopping when a nurse showed him a chart. Spike never took his eyes off him, not even when Riley approached. Buffy. Much to Spike's ire, Buffy hugged Riley, leaning on him for comfort. It's bad, Riley. I know. I've got to do something, she blurted at him. Do something? Riley asked. Maybe there's some magic or something, a healing spell, she offered. Spike creased his brow and gave a shake of his head. Buffy didn't see it, but Riley did, and for once they agreed on something. Healing spell, Buffy. People get sick. I don't think magic can help. That attitude's not helping. I have to try. Okay, Riley gave in. Pulling out of his arms, Buffy fought to get her thoughts in order. I need to talk to Giles. Can you drop Dawn off at school for me? Tell her I'll meet her at the magic shop when she gets out. Whatever you need me to do, Riley agreed. I'll meet you in the magic box, Slayer. In the meantime, I'll swing by the gallery and see if I can get some of the insurance info the doc needed, he added, trying to be helpful. The gallery? Buffy questioned. I know the way through the tunnels. I'll pop up, have a chat with whoever's in charge when your mom's not there. Maybe make a couple of phone calls and see what I can find out, all right? He clarified. Buffy looked about to cry, but she nodded. He nodded back and went to retrieve his coat from across Dawn, waking her in the process. Spike, she murmured sleepily. Hey, sweet bit. Mom's out of surgery. Big sis is headed out to get a break while Soldier Boy takes you to school. We'll meet you at the magic box later after school, okay? What happened with Mom? The teen asked. He shook his head and lied. No news yet, love. It might be a while. He stepped back and turned to Buffy as Riley came close. I'll see you later, Slayer. She acknowledged him with a nod, and he headed out. He saw Ben at the end of the hallway and stopped to stare for a moment. Cut the brake line on your Nancy boy car. Growling, frustrated, he stalked down to the basement and the tunnel entrances. He swung by the blood bank on the way down and nicked a couple of bags for lunch. What Buffy didn't know wouldn't hurt her. That's good to be back. By the way, I've attempted to reach out to Terri, presumably she, to let her know that we're doing the reading, seek permission and so forth, but have not heard back. So If she is hearing this, I hope you're enjoying the reading. I'm very much enjoying the story that you wrote. And I have received a number of comments from the people listening. That's the cat box going off, or cat feeder, apologies. I've received a number of comments from people saying that they're surprised how much they missed the weekly fanfic reading as well. So again, I'm going to post sometime this week a catch-up for the reading, which will now include chapters 1 through 11. And then we'll pick this up on Monday. It's so funny how, I enjoy the podcast, and it's kind of an important part of my procedure and my, you know what it is. But when we do the readings now, I'm like, oh, I've missed this. I want to know what happens. There are so many chapters to go. Maybe with everyone being homebound right now, I will just do a half-week podcast where we just read a couple of chapters. I think that sounds fun. But then again, once it's done, it's going to be done, and then we'll be sad, or I'll be sad. I don't know about you. I don't know if you'll be sad. I get sad pretty easily. That's kind of what this whole podcast was about. All right, my friends. I ordinarily script a little see you next time, but I did not today, simply because I felt like it would be, there's all the things to say, and there's nothing that can be said. Yeah, it's just a weird time. It's scary for some of us, and it is what it is. We'll get through it together. I am here, and I will be back on Monday, and hopefully have a new video for you soon. I am learning more and more not to forecast, but in the meantime, as we talked about with the awareness of the autopilot, there's nothing wrong with autopilot. There's nothing wrong with me in sweatpants cuddling up against a box of Botta. That may have been something I needed to do for a day or two before I said, all right, so let's get back to it. Who do I want to be in this new normal, in this particular situation? And that person is someone who is talking to you guys and writing content and working on the story and running and all of that. Like I said, it hasn't changed. And just seeing the autopilot gives me that choice. So I hope that you're doing all right. And, I think for a while, be a little more regular. I think we all need it. All right, that's it. Have a great week, and I'll see you guys back on Monday.